Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you were watching a few weeks ago, you will have seen me start on the bench work for the K&R and Scenic Valley Railroad. This week I'm going to continue where I left off. So without further ado, let's just head out into the workshop and get busy. Well, I am back out in my workshop again today to work on the K&R and Scenic Valley Railroad again. When we left it last time, all the staging level frames were built, bolted together and leveled. Before I continue, I am going to put a tape on it one last time. I'm pretty sure that everything is the right size, but I want to make absolutely certain before I continue, because at this stage making an alteration is a lot easier than doing it later. So let me just check everything, make absolutely certain that all the dimensions are correct before I continue. Well, I'm back again, and it was a good job I checked, because while I was installing this brace yesterday I managed to move it slightly. I was about 1/8 of an inch out at this point, so I've just made the adjustment. It only took a few seconds, and now I'm going to continue. The next step for today is to get all the bus wires in for the staging yard. And it's not just a simple one pair of bus wires. With DCC, it is generally a good idea to have isolating sections on all staging tracks. So that's what I'm going to do. There are 9 staging tracks, which is why you see there are 9 small holes through each frame in addition to the one large one. So let me go inside and get my wire, and I will be right back. Well, all the bus wires are in. I've also cut most of the tops for the staging yard. I was just about to install them, and then I realised that I was supposed to make a video clip. Fortunately, I hadn't screwed them down yet. Now I've got 2 pairs of wires that go all the way. One for the track bus and one for the switch machines. All the shorter wires are the individual buses for separate staging tracks. The idea being that I want all of those to be on separate on-off switches, so that you can isolate trains and not have all these sound systems going off all the time. Well, I have now finished installing all the tops for the staging yard. It wraps around 3 sides of the bottom deck. The last 2 pieces of plywood on each side are only screwed down at the one end, the first 2 joists and the side members between them, because the vertical curve for the grade starts here where the square is, and most of this piece here will be on a 2% grade, but I've got to make sure that the vertical curve at the bottom is very gradual. I'm going to spread it out over at least 3 feet, because there's turnouts there, and I've got to be very, very careful, make sure that it's very accurate. But that will be a job for another day. I'm starting to lose the light now, and also I think I want to be able to set out all the road bed all the way to the helixes at both ends, all the way around here, before I start working on the grade. I think I'll be able to get it smoother that way, but I don't have any more plywood. I only had those 3 sheets left over from a previous project, so I'm going to have to go to Lowe's tomorrow and buy another truckload. I'm also pretty much out of 3/4 as well. I've got about half a sheet left. So I'm going to call that a day, and I will continue tomorrow. Don't go away. Well, at the moment I am in the process of laying out the bottom lap of the helix, and getting that right is always going to be the most critical step. The first thing I did was to calculate exactly where the center of the helix is, and I've temporarily placed a piece of 1/2 inch plywood in the hole so that I can mark that out, because obviously I can't draw lines on a hole. And now I've used my big square and my long level to create a 16 pointed star from that center point and mark everything where it goes over the 2 joists that the supports will rest on. You can see this one's a line here and a line here, and then one there and one there. Now I chose 16 because it gives me joists that are about 1 foot apart, which is what I aim for in all situations. I'm not going to take that board out just yet, even though I believe it's done its job. Once I get the bottom of this helix set out, I will then move the same board over to the other one and put it here. It will need to be trimmed because this hole is slightly shorter in one direction, but by making sure that I keep the center in exactly the right place, it will still work. Anyway, the next thing to do is to cut as much of the bottom lap as I can from a single sheet of plywood. Obviously one can't do the whole of the bottom lap of a helix in anything bigger than N scale, but I can get about 3/4 of it out of one sheet. Well, I've cut a big pile of helix parts. They are 6 3/4 inches wide. The idea being that I'm making them wide enough for double track, because that way it'll form a perfect foundation for the upper helix, which is double track, even though this one will only have a single track on it. This one large piece at the bottom is as much as I can make out of one sheet of plywood, and that will go in first. But if we now head over to the other helix, we can see that I've got a complete circle positioning on this one. This was cut out of a second sheet, and the idea being that this allows me to position it accurately. And you may notice that I have drawn around it everywhere that it touches the plywood. So when I do put the other piece in position, I know exactly where it's supposed to go. And I've also been working on connecting up the helix with the staging yard. This road bed is all cut. I haven't cut the length yet. By leaving it long, I have some tolerance. And note how I'm cutting it 4 inches wide. That also gives me some leeway. I've still got to cut one more piece in here, and then I can start working on assembling the helix. I'm not sure if that's going to be today. I may not have enough time to be worthwhile, but at least I'm going to get those last pieces cut. And I'm going to start working on the grade from this end. Round about where the framing square is where the grade starts, or rather where the vertical curve for the grade starts. And then it will go 2% all the way through this S bend and into the bottom of the helix. So let me get back to work and I'll check in with you again later. Well, it's December 24th and I am back out in my workshop. I didn't get quite as far as I intended yesterday, but as we can see, the bottom level of the helix and the road bed all the way to it is basically roughed in. I've just got to finish it up. And also, before I went in yesterday, I started getting the risers in for the vertical curve at the bottom. See how the vertical curve lasts a good 3 feet, and then it's 2% from here. 1/2 inch plywood on one riser, 3/4 on the next, and then the last one will be 2 pieces of 1/2 inch. And then these in the middle, I will just cut shims to fit wherever the plywood wants to sit naturally. And then the other side is the same. From there, it'll have more conventional risers, just vertical pieces of 3/4 inch plywood on every joist. So anyway, as I say, all the hard work is done. It's fairly easy from now on. So I'm just going to turn the camera off and get to work. Well, the grade starters are in. I discovered that the first joist needed a piece of this thin plywood from my Fast Tracks turnouts, and the second one needed one of those on top of the 3/16 door skin plywood that I'm using for fences. And as I've already mentioned, it's 1/2 inch, 3/4, and then 2 pieces of 1/2 inch. But because the thicknesses are not exact, they're only nominal, I had to shave the second piece down on the table saw very slightly. And I did the same here. The rest of it gets conventional risers, just blocks of scrap plywood. My technique here is to just clamp the first few temporarily in place. Then I put my special level tool on it. I've showed you one of these on a previous build. Basically the idea is that by putting slightly less than a 1/4 inch step on one end of a 12 inch piece of plywood, that gives me a 2% grade. I'm not going to be able to show you while holding the camera, but my technique is to slide it along from one joist to the next, check the bubble, and then make any minor adjustments with a framing hammer, just by tapping the top or the bottom of the riser. We can see that this end is low, just slightly. So I'm going to have to get underneath and tap it up with the framing hammer. And then I just work my way around all the way to the helix. The first two have been done, so I can screw those permanently in place and then move the clamps onto the next ones. Well, that's all for this video. During the next installment, I will do a lot more work on the helixes. So until then, thanks for watching and bye for now.